Good morning. Welcome to our online Sunday celebration here at the Center for Spiritual Living, Tampa Bay. I'm Laine Morgan, and I am blessed to serve here in this beautiful community as the senior minister, and we're glad you have found us, whether you're live with us here on Facebook this morning or you're listening to our lesson at some point throughout the week. We're glad that you're here. As always, Lori is hosting on Facebook, so let her know that you're here. I don't know about you, but I am very thankful this morning to have my faith, but also to have my faith community right now. You know, as we navigate through these current challenging situations in the world, I'm thankful that I know that I can join in the consciousness of God itself and take a stand for a world that works for everyone. You know, we're a community of inclusion and equality and diversity of every kind. And this morning, before we get into our lesson, I want to point out that I have lit the oneness candle. And I would like for you to join with me in prayer for a special kind of peace this day. A peace for the family and the community of George Floyd, but a peace for all of us. Everyone who's standing up for a world where the qualities of God, love and harmony and diversity and oneness, are a reality, not just a dream. A prayer for peace for everyone who is standing up for a world where all of our brothers and our sisters are treated with dignity. So I invite you to join with me in this prayer. In this moment, I stand in the consciousness and the truth that there is only one source of life, and I call that source God. There is only one source of love, and that source is God. There is only one source for everything. Everything that we experience in tangible form and everything we experience in the unseen. It is all of God. And this power that creates and animates everything and every human being is love. It is life, it is harmony, it is wholeness. And it is everywhere present in every single person. And I know that I am one with that too, and I know that is the truth of each one listening to this prayer this morning. I know that within each and every one of us is the heart of God. And right here and right now, I consciously align myself to that knowing, to that oneness. I allow Spirit to express through me this day. And I invite each one to know these words for themselves. The heart within each one is the heart of God. And when we choose to align ourselves with that and know that as our truth, our actions, our connections, our life, they are all holy. They are all complete. And they all do their right and perfect thing. And so this morning I know that our time together here in lesson and learning is guided by that divine intelligence. I know that as we talk about relationships this morning, we are talking about all relationships. We are all on the web of life with each other. Spiritual beings interacting with each other, creating the circumstances we experience and the lives that we build. And so today we stand in higher consciousness for a world that works for everyone, for a country that is free for everyone, for a community that is filled with love, a home that is filled with light, and a heart that is filled with God. So I give thanks for this time that we share this morning, and I let go. I let this word go, knowing that it vibrates out into the world and makes a difference. And I invite you to affirm with me together. And so it is. And so it is. Wow, this morning I'm almost compelled to just go off script and just talk, but I do have a lesson that I want to deliver, and today my lesson is actually about vegetables. Celery and carrots, to be specific. My talk title today is The Spirituality of Celery. Let me start by saying that I believe all relationships are sacred and should be treated as such, no matter how insignificant you feel like a relationship is in your experience. It is a sacred relationship, no matter who crosses your path in whatever role they are playing. It is a sacred relationship, and they should be treated as such. On the human level, many of us want to be carrots, but deep within, I believe that we're all celery. Let me explain. Let me explain by sharing an example that I found online. The example includes animals and people in the spiritual truth of relationships. I think that when we look at the natural world and nature itself, we can learn some spiritual truth about ourselves in a way that is less threatening and less stepping on our toes. But this story that I want to share may be familiar to you, and if it's not, then I invite yourself to become familiar with it because it's cool. So there were these two men. Their names were Ace and John, and they raised a baby lion cub that they named Christian. And sadly but naturally, over time, the lion grew and eventually got too big for the men to take care of him, for them to safely keep him. So the men loved the lion so much as they decided to try to release him into the wild to live with a pride of lions. And after enough time had passed and Christian had successfully integrated into this wild lion pride, the men decided to go back and visit the lion in the wild. So they positioned themselves on the edge of the lion territory and waited. And when Christian sensed that they were there, and he caught sight of his original owners, this look of recognition passed over his face, and then suddenly he ran straight into their arms. This lovely reunion ensued, and Christian even drew the other lions in the pride to the men. And the wild animals just seemed to accept these two men, I guess based on Christian's recommendation. But they accepted these humans into their midst. And it's a lovely story, and if you want to see a video of it, just Google lion reunited with owners or something like that, and you can see the reunion. It's pretty powerful. But what this relationship illustrates is the celery nature of a seeming broken relationship. There's some wisdom in this example if you compare it to the human experience. The naked truth is that if Christian were human, he would probably interpret Ace and John's action of releasing him as abandonment or betrayal or rejection based on something, he couldn't change his size and they seemingly kind of threw him away. He would have been fully justified in snubbing the men when they came to visit him at best, or just biting their heads off in the worst case reaction. So it's one example of celery. And I want to give you another more personal example. When I was a younger adult, I had a little miniature dachshund named Weebach. And when Weebach was about 6 years old, I had a baby. And when my daughter was born with all of her special needs, I found myself spending weeks and weeks in the hospital taking care of her. And I had to make the heartbreaking decision to let Weebach go to a new home. Well, so thankfully there was a friend who knew someone who was looking to adopt an adult dog. And so Weebach went to live with this woman named Cherry, who didn't live too terribly far away from me. And after a few years of raising my daughter Kelsey and taking care of her extreme medical needs, I I realized I missed Weebach and I wanted to go check on her. So I called Cherry and I arranged a visit. And when I entered the house, as you can imagine, Weebach went crazy. She was jumping and trying to get my attention and wanting me to pick her up and love on her. And I sat down on the sofa with Weebach to sit with her, and Cherry sat on a chair across the room from me so that we could visit. We wanted to talk about Kelsey and how things were going in our lives. And after just a few minutes of talking, Weebach got off the sofa next to me and went over and jumped up on the chair with Cherry and sat there with her for the rest of my visit. The message was so clear to me. I still love you, but I have successfully moved on. Again, if Weebach were capable of a typical human reaction, she might have felt like she was thrown away or for a new relationship. She might have refused to even see me or speak to me. But instead, these two animals responded in the natural spiritual wisdom that's inherent within them. Both of these stories about humans and animals illustrate the same truth. Love connections are forever. Love connections are celery. Let me explain. So several months ago, I was visited by some friends who had come down from Atlanta to see me. And we got to talking about how relationships end and how some people have a carrot experience at the end of a relationship and some people have a celery experience at the end of a relationship. And so we were bantering about whether or not the world was divided into like carrot people and celery people. So let me illustrate with an actual carrot and celery. So carrot, typical carrot, right? You break it. It's a clean break. The two pieces are not united in any way. It's done, it's over with. Perhaps you've had many carrot experiences in your life. These are the friends who go away without communicating any longer. These are the coworkers who leave their desk sitting right beside you and they never return your phone calls again. These are the lovers who never bother to come get their toothbrush beside the sink or give you back your keys to your place, right? These are the spouses who sign the divorce papers and never seem to be able to say a kind word or have a conversation further, even if you were married for years. And here's an interesting tidbit. The colder the carrot, the more quickly and easily it breaks. Understand the carrot analogy? Now let's try a celery stalk. When you break celery, there are strings of connection that remain. The two pieces are connected with fibers that don't let go easily, especially when the celery's warm. So perhaps you've had some celery experiences in your life too. These are the friends who move away, but they remain in contact for the rest of your life. They send you holiday cards with pictures of their children you've never even met. They're the coworkers who still call you when they have a project that they're working on. They just want your take on it. These are the former lovers who text you the name of a song that came on the radio when they were thinking about you years later. Or the spouses who signed the divorce papers and because it was the best way for you to move forward for the two of you as individuals. But the respect is so deep. Your friends keep forgetting you're divorced or asking you why you got divorced in the first place, right? So I don't believe that there are carrot people and celery people. I don't believe that. I believe that we either see relationships as a human experience or a spiritual experience. If we only see things from the human perspective, then when our body and our personality are no longer engaged with the person, the connection is broken, just like a carrot from the human perspective. But when we see relationships from a spiritual perspective, we begin to understand the entire web of life is made up of relationships, and this particular one that we're considering remains in place on the web of life eternally. Between any two people in a relationship of any kind is one of the strands of the web of life. Just like celery pieces have a strand of fiber that keeps them connected, We have between us and every other person we are in relationship with a strand of spiritual connection that remains forever. We get to use how we use that strand. The strand of spiritual connection that remains between two people will be used after the physical connection has ended. That strand will be used for memories, for thoughts about the other person. The strand will be used for any communication that continues on a verbal or a virtual level. The strand will be used for emotions, either positive or negative, that we feel when we think about that person. And the strand will be used for all the choices that we make about or toward that person. The strand is eternal. We can ignore it, we can deny it, we can pretend we don't use it, but I invite you to take a closer look at your own relationships and see if that is really true. The most important function of the strand that remains between two people is for transmitting love or any other spiritual energy. The flow of love can happen through thoughts or prayers or gratitude or forgiveness. Love is the purpose of the strand. But when we make a decision to remain unhealed, the strand becomes very heavy with low vibrating energy. The connection becomes heavy with regret and resentment and blame and judgment and all of that. Knots of anger and fear and spite can form on these cords. And these knots block the energy flow of energy on the web of life. That is why forgiveness work becomes absolutely essential in every single relationship we have or have ever had. Here's why. All the good in life flows on the web of life, on the web of relationships. We've talked about this before. All energy flows out from us and flows back to us on this web. So if we're surrounded by these knots and blocks all around us and the cords that flow directly to us, our good is being misdirected and blocked too. We can literally block our good on these strands. So think for a second about the most significant relationships you've had in your life and realize how close they really are to you on the whole web. Considering all the relationships you have, think about the closest ones. Your mother, your father, your siblings, your cousins, your childhood friends, anyone you've ever considered your best friend. Remember your first loves and all the romantic relationships of your adult life. Think about your closest bosses and coworkers, your work wives and your work husbands. Think about your teachers and your students. Think about your children. But also think about those with whom you have experienced major life events. Either events you would consider positive or negative. These people have a big strand of connection with you. Now picture the cords leading to all of these significant people. You might think that you've had some carrot endings to some or all of these relationships, but that spiritual cord remains. So are there knots in those cords? Are some of them so frayed by either party trying to gnaw at them and insisting that they're gone? Are they withered from the lack of attention? Which ones are flowing with energy and what kind of energy is flowing? If there is energy flowing, is it helpful and positive and loving energy, or are there active waves of regret and resentment and pain and fear? However you answered those questions speaks to your overall quality of your life. You see, the quality of your life greatly depends on the quality of your relationships. And since relationships are always, let me say it again, relationships are always temporary, we must each master the ability to repair and maintain the spiritual cords of connection, especially when the human level shifts. You know, I like to say that unless you're born a twin and the two of you are freakishly killed in an accident together, the only lifelong relationship from cradle to grave that you will ever have is with yourself or with God. You know, everyone else is a temporary companion on your journey. There's this human fairy tale illusion called happily ever after. And relationships that fall short of that expectation are deemed failures. And we punish each other and ourselves when they end. to spiritually evolve and heal, we absolutely must repair and maintain the spiritual cords of connection that remain at the end of relationships of any kind. But how? How, Laine? How do I do that? Here's the deal. On the physical level, some relationships, or most relationships, simply must end. Sometimes it's no longer healthy or self-preserving to continue to have a close connection with another person. Sometimes there's out of control human behavior. Sometimes there are unhealthy emotional exchanges that deplete the spirit of one or the other. Sometimes one person needs to grow in a different direction than the other. Sometimes jobs end. Sometimes disagreements get so big and unwieldy. Sometimes people move. Sometimes crimes are committed and people are removed from the situation. Sometimes one person dies. They can die physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, but they die. And sometimes a person can just change their minds or their values or their priorities and need to change relationships as a result. And sometimes those things hurt like hell. Disappointments and resentments, fear and anger are natural responses to those things happening. Our human ego personalities absolutely get to respond and react to these changes in whatever way they need to respond and react. No judgment. No judgment. React as you need to react. A reaction is a natural wave of emotional energy. The end of a relationship is the cause, and this emotional reaction is the effect. It is a reverberating wave, and it is real. However, eventually, once that initial reaction has run its course, once that vibration is done, sometimes that takes time. But once it is complete, you get to decide what happens next. The cord will eventually lie dormant between the two people. And then you have a divine choice to make, a life-impacting choice to make, a block your good or increase your good choice to make. Do you poison the cord with fresh doses of resentment and regret and pain? Or do you begin to repair the cord with forgiveness and compassion and understanding and love and gratitude for the relationship that was? You are the only person who chooses what happens to your cords. What you send out on the cord will come back to you. Never ever forget that. If you send out death and fear, you cut off your flow. If you send out life and love, you enhance your flow, your celery, your choice. The Bible has a story that is familiar to each one of us. It's the story of the prodigal son. You can find it in Luke chapter 18, verses 11 through 32. I won't read the scriptures. But basically, a father, for someone who doesn't know, a father has two sons, and he gives his inheritance to the two sons early. One son takes the inheritance and stays by the father's side and continues to help the father without interruption. The other son goes out into the world and he spends his wealth until he is penniless and living amongst swine. At some point, this son with the swine has something awaken in him. And the prodigal son rises up in his awareness and he asks to return home. And in response, the father prepares a feast and welcomes the son home with open arms. The brother who remained at home resents the father for welcoming his irresponsible sibling back into the fold. But the father's love is greater. Can you see the spiritual cords on display in this story? Each of the characters is sending energy along the connections between them, and their good is determined by the quality of the maintenance of their cords. You know what? We all have prodigal characters in our lives. Those people who seemingly betrayed our trust and left the scene. And when this happens, the friends who remain by our side are often resentful when the prodigal one reaches out with the text or the phone call or the Facebook post, aren't they? You know, we're often encouraged to keep the mistrust and the regret strong and keep the other person at bay. Forgiveness is often viewed as not cool, right? They don't deserve that. But our souls will tug at us to answer the phone. Our souls will tug at us to respond to the text. Our deepest self craves the relief that forgiveness and reconnection can bring. Of course, our range of response can be wide. Depending on the circumstances, yes, we can prepare the feast and welcome the prodigal one back home with open arms. But at a minimum, we can agree to start the reconnection process with a tiny step. Maybe a prayerful reminder of the boundary that is necessary. A single conversation, a shared therapy session, attendance at a mutual friend's wedding, an exchange of letters, a refriending on Facebook, anything, a tiny step. A first sending of a wave of positive energy on the cord of connection. So let me take this personal for a second. Since many of you who are listening may not be members of our community, you may not know that I have personally had a tumultuous year of relationship changes. My 13-year marriage ended last summer, and as you can imagine, over time there have been many sleepless nights and heartbreak and disappointment with all kinds of emotions going on. There's always great opportunity for spiritual learning and growth too. There have been so many conversations seeking to understand and be understood. And yes, there have been moments when we both thought we were dealing with a carrot situation, but somehow we have kept using our spiritual cord for connection and love and forgiveness and healing. And we've remembered the truth of our celery nature and have embraced the good that remains between us and will always remain. And then more recently, I was in a dating situation where the two of us mutually decided that we are far better friends than we could ever be life partners. And since our connection wasn't that long, many people around us thought we would be having a carrot experience right about now too. But when two people understand deeply that they are in a spiritual relationship, the spiritual truth of celery can guide everyone to the healing necessary to release the physical without severing the connection on a deeper level. Last weekend I was having an intense conversation about the word forever. Sometimes, as I said earlier, when we look at our relationship history, and if we haven't achieved that Cinderella concept of happily ever after, we can feel like a failure. And I think that's kind of how I was feeling. Thankfully, I was with a friend who helped me reframe the concept altogether of the word forever. She said, Laine, take a closer look at your life. You, of all people, have mastered the concept of forever better than can be expected. You have many people who you have loved and will love forever. Celery. When I make a commitment to loving someone forever, I mean it. And what I mean by that is, no matter what the circumstances, I will commit to finding my way back to love. Back to using my spiritual cord of connection between me and that other person to run love energy in this lifetime and eternally. It doesn't matter if you're my friend, or my coworker, or my spiritual or natural family member, or my partner. It doesn't matter. Our spiritual celery string is still there, and I am sending love across it. God's love is the only love there is. We like to categorize love. Categories don't matter. It's all love. That means it's all God. Our monthly theme for the month of May was listen to your heart. So let's close out this month here on May 31st by remembering that our heart is the heart of God's love. And it is our purpose on this planet to serve in our position on the web of life as a conduit for that love. Unknot your cords. Do your forgiveness work. Be a celery stalk and quit pretending that you're a carrot. I'm going to close with a poem I wrote a few months ago about the concept of a relationship continuing beyond an ending. It is called Choosing Love Now. So I wrote this. I was human. I was not perfect. I mattered to you, you mattered to me. We gave each other many beautiful things. We shared memories. I may no longer be in your physical presence, but I live in your mind, heart, and soul. I always will. May I live on in your life for joy, not pain. Use my energy presence in your world for good, not harm. Use my material blessings to feel secure and stable, not guilty. Use my name to share love, not fear. Use my memories to lift yourself up, not tear you down. Choose well and know that I am blessed wherever I am by your loving thoughts of me. Live well, love well. Please join me in prayer. In this quiet, holy moment, I give thanks for every relationship I've ever had. I give thanks for the cords of connection that run between me and all the people in the world that I know and love and cherish. And I know that heart of God, that love of God is within the heart of each one listening. I know that each one of us are surrounded in life by a web of connection that we use to send our energy out into the world, to send our love out into the world, to send our light, our harmony and our joy, our peace. And we can send that love out on the web of life through our thoughts, through our prayers, through our choices, through our actions, through our emotions, through our intentions. And although we may feel far away from someone important to us, we are all one. The presence has us connected, always. So in this moment, I use this web of life and web of love to send out pure, positive energy to everyone. For when I pulse that love out through the people that I know it goes on beyond that, and beyond them to the people they know, and the people they know, and the people they know, and the people they know. When I envision a world that is blanketed by the love that originates in this prayer, I know it comforts whoever it reaches. So I give thanks for this celery analogy. And I trust God to be the energy that helps me maintain those cords forever. And so it is. And so it is. Now that I have celery and carrots, I just need some hummus. I'll have some lunch. So let me give you some announcements before we leave this morning. I'm happy to announce, joyful to announce, that next Sunday, June 7th, we will be opening our doors to receive you in person. So in order to give some space for social distancing, the board met yesterday and prepared the space to receive you. The sanctuary has been set up in a way that chairs are distanced appropriately. If you come with someone, you're able to sit together, but there are also chairs seated singularly to give you space as well. So everyone entering the building must wear a mask. So we'll be keeping everything very simple for the next few months. No coffee or no handouts, things like that. If you're an early riser, please plan to come at 9 o'clock for our 9 o'clock service. We're offering 2 services to help people spread out a little bit more. And if you're going to come to the 10:30 service, come early. Come about 10:15 or so we can make sure we get everybody seated. And we can add extra seats beyond the sanctuary into the fellowship hall if we need to. The sound system, the new sound system, actually works out there so you can be in the presence of your spiritual family, even if there's not enough room in the sanctuary for everyone. But we will also broadcast at 10:30 It won't be live, but we will be broadcasting just right here where you are on Facebook at 10:30, so that if you decide to stay home, and we know there are many people that still will, that's fine. We will continue to reach out to you virtually and are so happy that you join us. So next Sunday, be here. I can't wait. We will continue our our Wednesday nights on Zoom, so online. If you need the link for that, shoot an email to info@csltampabay.org. Otherwise, if you have the link, please join us on Wednesdays, every Wednesday at 7. And I have exciting news. I've decided to host a new book club discussion group starting on June 18th. Let me show you the book. Starting on June 18th and continuing every Thursday at noon for 4 weeks. I want to come together on Zoom to discuss this new Glennon Doyle book called Untamed. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle version. This is a hardback. It's not in paperback yet, but it is a very timely book, and I don't want to wait. So try to get the book and read part 1 before the 18th of June. Watch the newsletter and Facebook for more details about how it will work. But go ahead and order the book and start reading Untamed, Glennon Doyle. We'll discuss part 1 June 18th. I can't wait. It's a fabulous book. Also, if you remember, we were sponsoring as our nonprofit in the last quarter, Amethyst Respite Center. And we were not able to complete our supply drive for them when we got interrupted with COVID. So starting next Sunday, you are welcome to bring your backpacks stuffed with non-alcohol based toiletries, puzzles, games, things like that. These backpacks and duffel bags can be gently used or new. You can bring them empty or stuffed. You can also bring the toiletries not in the backpack, and we'll give them to them anyway. So we are coming together to bless our neighbors that are struggling with addiction issues and homelessness issues by helping Amethyst Respite Center with our supplies. So that's a reminder that will be back in the newsletter again to help remind you for next Sunday too. So thank you for your generosity toward us, knowing that we always help the nonprofits in Tampa that are focused on issues that really matter to us. So thank you for that. So I think that is all of the announcements, and I'm sure you will agree that we're looking forward to hearing them from Randy himself next week. I'm kind of bored with myself being the only one on camera. I can't wait to see you all. I also want to add a thank you to Reverend Carol O'Connell for her message last Sunday, and for Ellen for hosting as the board member. Thank you to both of them. Thank you for my technology team in the room this morning as well. Have a blessed Sunday. Namaste, y'all. See you next week.